City, a little town where I'm from, where everybody's southern raised, just as good as they come. Backwoods and mossy oak and mud holes, and back then we only gave what the farm grow. Man, I miss some days how we played on them dirt roads, and out of towners came with respect, cause they know we all close. Yeah, southern pride, toting gun folks. Welcome to my city, I-75 South, just north of Live.
I'm from a city called Austin, Georgia, right on the border of Florida. I was raised on these dirt roads, mud tires, spin backwoods, running right. This is small town living, yeah. Now welcome to my city, title town, 229, turn it up so they can hear it loud. We get it up with big trucks and heavy G's, pretty girls with moonshine and whiskey.
It's nothing like our dirt roads, you can bet that, son. I'm from a city, by any means we gon' protect our guns. I hang with the rednecks and geekies. We get up in big trucks in the backwoods like Indians and TVs. This the home of the mighty, mighty Vikings, Wildcats, Blazers, Titletown license winners, pretty girls with country grammar. When I say about Austin, Georgia, I ain't talking about Atlanta. This a different type of city, where the woods are pretty, but get gritty, you hear me? What you know about that 229? You can find us on the Florida, Georgia line, where I reside.
I'm from a city called Austin, Georgia, right on the border of Florida. I was raised on these dirt roads, mud tires, spin backwoods, running right. This is small town living, yeah. Now welcome to my city, title town, 229, turn it up so they can hear it loud. We get it up with big trucks and heavy G's, pretty girls with moonshine and whiskey. Moonshine and whiskey.
Some folks really don't understand how important it is to never forget where you came from. You know, when I say Lowndes County, man, I mean Lowndes County.
I'm from a city called Austin, Georgia, right on the border of Florida. I was raised on these dirt roads, mud tires, spin backwoods, running right. This is small town living, yeah. Now welcome to my city, title town, 229, turn it up so they can hear it loud. We get it up with big trucks and heavy G's, pretty girls with moonshine and whiskey.
Good evening. You guys know what time it is, right? When you hear that music, I hope that music is special to you by now, because when you hear that music, it's time for the Viking Nation Live, and you know what that means. It's just one more day until Friday. We can celebrate the weekend. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Hope you've been very productive, gotten a lot done, but something that I'm starting new on this show is a do you know what time it is segment. So when you hear that music, do you know what time it is? It's time for the quote of the day. It's time for the quote of the day. And here's the quote of the day. Successful people build each other up. They motivate, inspire, and push each other. Unsuccessful people just hate, blame, and complain. And we are a community of successful people. So we build each other up. That's why we emphasize one Lowndes. And so with that said, welcome to the Viking Nation Live. This is your weekly soiree into everything Lowndes and all these other communities around here as well. So I'm your host, Larry Godwin, and welcome to the show this week, folks. Hope you had a great week and looking forward to our discussion tonight because, man, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about, well, let's just go ahead and get into it. Travis Hart. Let's see what you guys are on me already. Let's see what Travis says. Travis says, hearing that song also means it's another week closer to football season. Travis, so right you are. As a matter of fact, let me tell you how right you are. Did you guys know that it's only 33 days until official practice begins with pads? 33 days away. Think about that for a second. We've been talking about it since the season ended in December, and here we are on the eve of true practice beginning. And let me take it a step further. There are only 4,492,800 seconds, or in other words, 52 days until game day. So hope you got your lounge swag all ready to go. If you're going to buy a new lounge hat, go ahead and get it done. Go to a couple places in town. RNS Sports usually has good hats. Does Steedley at Spirit Screen Print, do they sell hats? I can't remember. I'm not sure or not. I think the Boardwalk there sells Vikings hats. So wherever you get your lounge swag, go ahead and start planning on it, because we only got 4.5 million seconds left until game day. So anyway, I hope that has put a smile on your face. Greg Maddox says, of course, the Boardwalk. So Greg, how you doing, man? Hope you guys have had a great week. Let's go ahead and get into it. Playoff brackets were released today, and we won't get into all the weeds when it comes to the playoff brackets, but they were released today. And you got to know what that means. This year in the first round, Region 1 will face Region 4. Now, on the surface, that probably means nothing to you, but let me tell you who Region 4 is. Okay, so you guys know all the Region 1 teams. Let me tell you who Region 4 is. Archer, Brookwood, Grayson, Newton, Parkview, and South Gwinnett. It's a pretty tough region to face off with in the first round, right? But our Vikings are up to the task. So listen, let's just go ahead and win the region so we don't have to necessarily worry about it so much. But if we find ourselves in that fourth spot, then it could be an uphill sledding from there. Tierra says, I was hoping you'd talk a little bit about the brackets. And Tierra, we will break down the brackets in a lot more detail next week. Like what I'm going to do next week on next week's show. Next week's show is going to be a little bit different because it's dead week next week. It's the July 4th week, and that means every high school in the state basically has to shut down their athletic activities for the week. No OTAs, no 7-on-7s, no baseball, softball practice, no nothing. Everybody gets a week to just take a deep breath. So all these football coaches love and hate that week. Trust me, they do. They love and hate it because they love it because they get a week with their families. They hate it because it's a sprint to the finish after that week. Well, hate is probably too strong of a word, but you know what I mean. So next week, we'll get into the details of the bracket, meaning that, okay, if Lowndes finished first, who would they face would they likely face every round leading into the state championship? And we'll go basically deep into the weeds, Tira, next week. Now, week after that, I've got some exciting news for you. We're going to have a bunch of Lowndes coaches on after that. Let me tell you who's on the lineup for that. July 13th, that show, Fred Mitchell is going to be back on the show. Coach Fred is going to be back on the show. Then the following week, Coach Reese. Then after that, Coach Demps. And then after that, August 3rd, Coach Sellers. So we have an exciting month of assistant coaches that are going to be on the Viking Nation Live. So I know it's the summertime. You're tempted to go be with your families, and I encourage that. But please don't forget about the Viking Nation Live. If you can't catch us live, catch us on the on-demand replay, always available at the Viking Nation on Facebook. So anyway, tonight we've got a special call-in guest that will be calling in about 5 minutes, and that is Phil Jones with ITG Next. And many of you know who Phil is. He's been covering prep sports for a long, long time. And so he's got some really, really good insight into our Region 1 7A teams. And so he's going to give us some insight because he keeps in touch with Jeff Herron over there in Camden. He keeps in touch with the Richmond Hill coaches. He does an outstanding podcast that recaps a lot of this stuff. So tonight he's going to be calling in and giving us an update, what we can really expect and look for in a couple of teams, Camden County and Richmond Hill. Of course, you all know they are two fellow teams in Region 17A. So he's also, when I reached out to Phil to ask him to talk about Camden and Richmond, he asked me, he says, I know you guys talked about Buford last week, but I've got some insight on Buford because they did a pretty good documentary on Buford football that's available on their ITG Next YouTube channel. I encourage everybody to go and watch that. But he's got some insight into the Buford program, and he wanted to specifically talk about the Dylan Raiola transfer that we touched on last week. So he might have some insight on that. So I can't wait to. Casey Harrell says, I like that mic cover, LG. Casey, absolutely. This thing is fantastic. I just had this idea several weeks ago. It's like, I was watching another podcast. I admit it was a political podcast, but I was watching another podcast and they had a customized mic cover / windscreen for their microphone. And I thought, I'll just get one with the Viking Nation on it. So that's how that came about. But Casey, you're right. I love this thing. I absolutely love this thing. So Phil's going to call in and we're going to talk about those three topics. And he really was excited to talk about the Dylan Raiola transfer situation. So, because I know that everybody, when they hear Buford's name, they automatically jump to the conclusion of they're recruiting. But guys, I've got news for you. Buford has built such a brand over the years that honestly, I don't think they have to recruit. People come knocking on their door. And let's be honest, just about every coach in the state of Georgia. Let me take that back. I don't want to say just about. I will say 100% of the coaches in the state of Georgia want their program at such a spot or such a point where players come knocking on their doors and families come knocking on their doors because families move. We live in a very transient time where everyone's mobile. People move for jobs. People move for more opportunities, things like that. And so the cynical side of us says that every time we see a transfer into Buford, we automatically assume it's got to be recruiting. But that may not be the case. So Phil's going to give us a little bit more insight into that. Let me go ahead and touch on a couple things before Phil calls in, which was pretty exciting stuff. We've been talking last several weeks about what a great job Lowndes Golf is doing, especially Steve Holly. He's leading up that program. I shouldn't say especially Steve Holly. He's leading up that program as the golf coach, but he has an exceptional group of student athletes, and they're continuing their hard work. You know how good of a year they had last year, and we're going to have Jacob Spees, graduated senior golfer from Lowndes High. He's going to be on the show hopefully next week, and so to continue the Lowndes golf tradition, man, that program has been hard work. They're playing in several tournaments over the weekend. So Steve posted this on the Lowndes Viking golf page. He says, big congratulations to Lowndes golfer Mason Hodges on his first place finish at River Point Country Club tournament held in Albany, Georgia. So Mason, way to go, buddy. Congratulations, man. Let me go ahead and share this screen so everybody can see his smiley face, so everybody can join in on the fun here. Okay, so here we go. Let's add to stream. Let me make this big old right here. Check this out. Low medalist Mason Hodges at the River Point Country Club's tournament held in Albany. First place. Congratulations, Mason. Check this out. Our Vikings are hot this summer. Help us congratulate Jimmy Cohen III on his near-perfect performance at the Wind Lakes Junior Classic held in Montgomery, Alabama the past 2 days. Jimmy placed second in the 14 and 15 age group and finished fourth overall, ages 14 to 19. Well done, Jimmy, and go Vikings. Attaboy, Jimmy. And check this out. Lowndes golfers Pate Langdale and Jimmy Cohen III had a strong showing during day one at the Wind Lakes tournament in Montgomery. So we talked about Jimmy, but Pate Langdale had a fantastic day as well. So congratulations to all these fantastic golfers. Keep up the great work, guys. You put in the work, we're going to highlight it for you. That's for dang sure. Trainer says Jacob Speed sounds like a professional golfer. It does, doesn't it? I just thought about that, man. It really, really does. Jacob's a really, really good kid. Now, I'm going to warn you guys when he comes onto the program. I told you guys last week that I challenged Jacob and his dad Jim to a round of golf a couple of weeks ago, and I beat his pants off of him, beat him by 5 strokes. But listen, when he comes onto the program, he's going to refute that. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for those shenanigans. I'm telling you. Who you going to believe, me or Jacob? So I beat his butt, but he's going to claim that never happened. He's going to give you some false score, that kind of stuff. But you and I know the truth, right? No, congratulations to Jacob and all the other Lowndes golfers for having a fine year. So let's see. Silver helmets. Are y'all back on the color of the helmets? Travis says all of Viking athletics are looking great and shining strong. Absolutely. Absolutely, Travis. All of them. So let me give Phil a text and see where he's at. Phil Jones. Okay, so Tierra Battle says, LG, we can't get over the helmets. I'm right there with you, Tierra. I'm pulling for the silver helmets bad. Listen, I would love to be able to do what I'm going to bring up a name. You remember Jamie DuBose? Obviously, you remember Jamie DuBose. When he was the head coach at Phoenix City, Alabama, they had one particular year, they had different color schemes, not just in uniforms, but they had multiple helmet schemes as well. Now, how cool would that if Lowndes had like 3 different colored helmets? He had the traditional crimson, he had a silver helmet, and maybe he had a white helmet as well. Wouldn't that be cool? That would be awesome. Listen, Wilbur, you guys behave when Phil calls in. Okay, Wilbur says that, let me just put it on the screen. He says that Greg Maddox, I'm not buying on that baloney that Buford doesn't recruit from Phil. Just my opinion. Hey, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody is. But you know what? I don't think they really have to, man. I really don't. So he should. Yeah, he says, yeah, he's calling in. So here he is right here. Hey, caller, welcome to the Viking Nation Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, Larry, it's Phil Jones.
Hey, Phil Jones. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, brother. How about you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, because this time of year, even though it's downtime for the fans, guys like me and you, we are hustling to get news because the content might be slow. So I know how hard you're working, brother.
Yeah, man, I tell you, it's been probably the busiest all season that we've ever had. I think it just, goes to the fact that there's so much more excitement. There's so much more anticipation,
That's right.
The players seem to be better. So yeah, Larry, I hear you 100%. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Phil, really appreciate you calling in tonight. When I reached out to you, the main purpose was, on the show during the off season that I've really tried to focus on some of the teams in Region 17A and this upcoming season. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a sports reporter, Mary Alex Anders. She spends a lot of time over in Moultrie. She covers the Colquitt County program. So she was on the program, did a great job of talking about what to expect from the Packers. So I thought I would reach out to you to come on the show and give us a kind of give us an idea of what to expect from some, one team that's kind of a nemesis for Lowndes and another newcomer to Region 17A, and those are Camden County and Richmond Hill. So I appreciate you calling in tonight. So let's start off with Camden County, because you stay in touch with Jeff Herron a pretty good bit throughout the year, I might add. So I think you've got a pretty good pulse on what's happening over there. Are you surprised at all how quickly Jeff Herron has turned that program back around?
Not a bit, Larry. I was actually a little surprised, although, I was a little surprised in year one, which, and I know you and I have talked a lot about this. That was his first year back. after an extended absence where he went, and coached, was an assistant coach of Tennessee Tech.
Right.
And of course, you had Bob Spire, who stepped in and really, took what he had inherited from Jeff Herron, took and turned the program completely around, at least the offense around 180 degrees. So when Jeff Herron came back to Camden, he had to take it back, back to where he had it for so many years. But, it's just like Rush's first year at Colquitt. A lot of great coaches, they have that 1 year transition of trying to get everybody on their way of thinking and on their page. And then I think that's the way it was with Jeff Herron in year one. So really, what he did last year was really not a surprise at all. The guy's been a winner his whole coaching life. And, so really nothing that they do as far as success at Camden is going to surprise me under Jeff Herron.
Phil, do you think that he's just a fantastic motivator, or has he just sold that community? Because I noticed that when he immediately got there, their numbers almost like doubled overnight as far as player participation. Because over the years when he was gone, we saw the players just not show up for county football. And I remember one year when Camden came over here, I can't remember if it was under the Bob Spire era or Welton Coffee, but one year, I remember commenting, it's like to someone that was on the sideline, it's like, man, this might be the smallest offensive line I've ever seen from a Camden County offense. So when he initially came back, you think the community just rallied around him? But so what do you think was the secret to him motivating that community over there?
Well, the name Jeff Herron, of course, resonates and always has in that community. And again, it goes back to the days of when you could count on Camden, being a region champion, qualifying for the region championship, going deep in the state playoffs. And so I think Coach Herron kind of became this larger than life figure.
Yeah.
And that coupled with the fact that he leaves and, Camden does okay, but again, nothing like what they were used to doing when he was there before. Now, in fairness to Bob Spire, they also underwent some changes and, got into Region 17A and things like that. So, there were some changes there in fairness to the previous regime. But, I think to answer your question, it has to do with the reputation that Jeff Herron, built. They practically gave him the farm to come back and coach that program. Because, again, just the success that he had as far as the numbers, the kids, all the players, they were familiar growing up in that community. Everybody's familiar with Jeff Herron and the legacy that he left behind the first time that he was at Camden and when he left. And so his return was so well anticipated, and they expected nothing but, great things. And I think that's why, again, he's kind of a larger than life figure. And again, it's the personality. He has, the wins to back it up, the personality. He's he's not a big rah-rah guy. He's kind of just a talk slow, but, the kids pay attention and respect him. So, yeah, I think, to answer your question about being a great motivator, he is, but he does it in a very different and unique way.
So let me ask you a question from the flip side of that. So there are some detractors out there that may say, listen, last year, Camden faced a 5-6. Well, I think Lowndes was 6-5. So something like it wasn't Lowndes' most stellar year last year. And then they also beat a Richmond Hill team that, just isn't a very strong 7A Richmond Hill team. And then they beat a Valdosta offense that had basically virtually no offense last year. So he had those 3 wins in the region, but didn't fare very well in the playoffs. So you got some detractors out there. It's like, yeah, Camden may not be on the rise as quickly as we think because they just caught Region 17A in a down year last year. What would you say to that?
Yeah, some of that I agree with, but let me go back to the Valdosta game. You got to remember, Valdosta was a top 10 team. They were undefeated going over to Camden. And and this goes back to Jeff Herron.
Yeah.
So Jeff Herron, with not known for their explosive offenses, however, You take a little bit closer look, boy, they put up some big time offensive numbers last year, albeit against, like you said, not the strongest, opponents, but still they put up a bunch of points last year. So going into that Valdosta game, Jeff Herron sat down and he told me about this last year. We did the coaches show with Coach Herron every week, and we'll do it again this year with him and several other coaches, which we can talk about later. But he said, we looked at what Valdosta was doing on film. We looked at what they were having success with against everybody else, and we decided to go in there and attack some areas that we thought we could have some success. One of those was passing the football. Now, you don't exactly think of Camden and passing the football.
That's true.
In your same thought. But that's exactly what they did. I think Valdosta was stacking up. Their game plan on defense was to stack up, try to protect against the run, which everybody tries to do that against Camden. So Jeff Herron and his staff sees that. They come out, do some play action, and Mason Robinson, I think, hit not one but two touchdown passes against the Valdosta, and they were able to do something that nobody had been able to do all year, which was put up points on the Valdosta defense. And of course, they also did what nobody else was able to do, which was beat the Cats.
Yeah.
So that was a huge win, Larry. And I think that really catapulted Camden, for the rest of the year. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think they won a playoff game, and
they did
at least one. But, so I thought, though, that game was a signature win for Jeff Herron, the crafty coach who, no matter what you do, you're not going to outcoach the guy. And I think, again, that's just another big element for Camden County.
Absolutely. So Camden travels over to Valdosta twice next season to play Valdosta and Lowndes. So we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. But I think they are. But I think that the Wildcats of Camden are on the rise once again, just mainly because of what Jeff Herron has done. Because listen, in high school football, if you've got community sport, that's half the battle right there. Just getting the kids out. And you can tell based on their film from last year, their players are much bigger just because they have a bigger pool to pull from. And that wing T is always tough to stop. And when he starts adding a passing element into it, it's very, very difficult to stop. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this season. Speaking of this upcoming season, how do you think they're going to fare?
Well, and so right now, one of the things that we're doing at ITG Next is I'm putting together all of our Georgia high school football previews. I think I've already written and we've already posted the Camden preview, and I like Camden to do a little bit better than they did last year. Last year they finished 8-4. I like for them. I think they got a great chance to win 10 games this year, including a couple of playoff games. And listen, and I get it. People will say, wait a minute, 10 wins for Camden. You take a look at their schedule and you start going game by game. That's not something I really like to do. Well, I think they'll win that one. I think they'll win that one, because you're always going to have a surprise both ways, right? You're going to have Camden. They'll beat a team that they probably shouldn't, and they're probably going to lose to a team they shouldn't. But I think, again, you count a couple of those wins as a playoff win. So you're probably looking at, Camden, I think, winning 8 of the 10 regular season games. And again, you look at the schedule, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm actually out walking my dog tonight, Larry. So I have no notes in front of me. So, but I remember I looked at the schedule earlier, and it's not easy, but it's very doable for Camden. Again, I think they're going to be as good, if not better, than they were last year. And so, I like for them to win 10 games this year. And again, I think they'll win a couple of playoffs games.
Wow. Well, Tierra Battle says, it definitely helps when you've got Elias Williams over there on tight end on your offense.
Oh, look who dropped in.
What's that now?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I was saying that, by the way, look who dropped in, none other than Elias Williams.
6'8", 230 pounds of all-world tight end.
Yeah, and by the way, I think I wrote the preview before they had announced that he had transferred in. But anyway, so, just add to, what Camden's already got coming back. Now, I will say this. Well, they're going to lose a guy who was really the heart and soul of that defense. He actually played some offense too, Jake Lindsey, who you guys may remember well, I'm trying to think of his dad's name. That was the head coach at Cook. Anyway, coach's son, really good player. He's on to West Point.
Yeah.
So he was a heart and soul, free safety for that defense. He'll be missed.
Now speak. If you had to put your money on it, so early in the season, who do you think, which side of the ball carries Camden? Is it going to be that high octane wing T offense, or they're going to have to rely on their defense a little bit?
No, I think they'll come right. I think Harry now has got a year under his belt. I know he's been back 2 years, but he got a year under his belt where the offense averaged right at, I think it was 30, 31 points a game. So, Larry, if they can get any kind of defense this year, you average 30 points a game again. That should win you, quite a few ball games. Look at their point out, their outpouring of points last year. I mean, they really put up some points. And again, I don't have their schedule in front of me, but they won by out-dueling people last year. They had 45-28 type games. So I look for them to have that kind of season again. And to answer your question, I think they'll do it by the way of offense this year.
Yeah. So Phil, just a quick rundown. They start the season with Columbia. And I don't know if that's Columbia, Florida or Columbia, Georgia. I'm assuming it's Columbia, Georgia.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So,
and that's, yeah, go ahead.
So I think they'll blow Columbia away. Then they have a home game against Brunswick, and away game against Glen Academy. They have a home game against New Hampstead, Somerset Academy from Pembroke Pines, Florida, Atlantic Coast from Jacksonville. So that's their they have Beach at home as well for this part of their non-region schedule. So just looking at they're probably going to be undefeated, maybe one loss, but probably more likely undefeated heading into region play. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. And I was thinking the same thing before we talked. I was kind of going through the games just like you did. And the Brunswick game is going to be tough. I think Brunswick beat them last year, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but anyway, that you can consider that one game, I think, a toss up, Larry. But you're absolutely right. I agree with you. I think every other game, Camden's going to be the favorite.
Yeah, and then they start their region schedule against Richmond Hill. They'll win that one at home. They hit the road on October 20th to Valdosta. Now that's going to be interesting again because Valdosta is kind of an anomaly this year because of some of the issues they ran into with their defensive personnel earlier this year. So we're not quite sure what to expect from Valdosta, but I think they'll beat Valdosta. I really do.
Yeah, I think Valdosta's going to have a good team again this year. I think there's a lot of similarities where you're talking about Jeff Herron and Camden and Shelton Felton at Valdosta. I think Shelton Felton has been a great fit, is a great fit for Valdosta. Now, listen, make no mistake about it. I'm not really sure what the situation is with Omar White, and I don't want to get really into a lot of the specifics because I know it's an ongoing legal matter. But if they don't have him this year, that's a huge, huge loss. I mean, you're talking about possibly the best defensive lineman in the country, certainly in the state of Georgia. So anyway, again, not going to get into the particulars, but bottom line is if he's with them, they'll be very, very good. If not, they're going to definitely miss him.
Absolutely. So since I've got a pretty large Lowndes audience that's watching us tonight, so they want to know this. They want to know about this game, November 3rd. Camden County comes to the Concrete Palace to take on our Lowndes Vikings. So what do you think about that game?
Well, again, you got Adam Carter, who I think is going to do good things. I don't think Lowndes is quite there yet, but they will be. I guarantee you that with Adam Carter.
Hold on, Phil. Hold on, Phil.
Yeah.
Hold on, man. This is a Lowndes show, so I gotta put you in the penalty box. I gotta put you on mute for a second.
Hang on a second, Larry.
I cannot believe he comes onto a Lowndes show. Of course, he's in the penalty box right now, so I've got him on mute, so he can't respond to my diatribe.
All right, yes, I'm in the penalty box. So we're talking about Lowndes ice hockey here. All right, I'm in the penalty box. Go ahead.
So I cannot believe Phil. This is a Phil of All World ITG Next And, I got him in the penalty box. He comes onto a lounge show. He's supposed to whip up the fans and now he's poo-pooing and raining on our parade. Phil, what in the world, dude?
No, listen, I have all good things to say about Lowndes. Seriously, that's going to be a great game. Again, two great coaches. Talk about two great motivators. Let me just say this. Lowndes, with everything going on, I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding the program from a couple of different directions here recently. But all that being said, there's also a lot of good things. I had Danny Ridshaw. I do another podcast. I host a podcast called Next Take Georgia. Yeah. It's a little bit different from the my weekly show that I do on Facebook. But I had Coach Ridshaw. He's our guest, and I encourage all you Lowndes fans to listen to it. We'll have it posted later this week. Early next week. I'm sorry. But Danny Ridshaw, we talk about all the great things that are going on at Lowndes, and especially since he's just completed his first year officially in the role of athletic director.
That's right.
The hiring of Adam Card, you got that brand new indoor facility, which I got to tell you guys, it is the talk of the state. Everybody is talking about that thing. Now, getting back to the football side of things, that's going to be a great game. Anytime you take you play in the Concrete Palace, you might as well give Lowndes a touchdown. Seriously, that's going to be kind of like the Brunswick game I was talking about. Flip a coin on that one. It's going to be a toss-up. But I still say I think Lowndes' best year or best seasons to come is probably going to begin next year.
Okay.
And I'm not saying they're going to be bad this year, and don't get me wrong, but
okay. So listen, if you're a big Lowndes fan and you're watching this, Phil spew his blasphemy tonight, maybe he just redeemed himself.
Oh, Larry, only you can do that, man. Only you can strike up the natives. I got to go. I got to look and see what I had to pick for. I think I had Lowndes picked to do pretty well this year too. So,
yeah, you did. So then Camden closes out the regular season against Colquitt. Now, everybody that has a pulse on, even if it's a tiny pulse on Georgia football, knows that going into the season, all the pundits out there, not just pundits, but fans in general, because it's true. So the heavy favorites in 7A this year, obviously Buford is at the top of the list. Carrollton is at the top of the list. And then Colquitt County is at the top of the list because of all their talent they're returning. So Camden takes on Colquitt, last regular season game of the year. What do you think about that matchup?
I'm sorry, Larry. Tell me which game are you talking about again?
Camden and Colquitt.
Wow. Listen, I think Colquitt is the toast of the region.
Yeah.
Again, they've got so much great talent that's returning this year. So I definitely have to. Where's that game at, by the way?
That's a good question. Let me check on it real fast. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Okay. So it is going to be at, come on, Larry, you should know this by now. Okay. So where is that game? I think they didn't they play in Camden last year? I believe they play in Colquitt this year, don't they? The reason I'm hesitating is I'm looking on the Max Preps schedule site, and the game's not even listed for both teams on Max Preps.
Really?
So
yeah. Oh, hold on just a second, Larry.
Yeah, Camden Marie says she thinks it's in Colquitt, and so I apologize. I should have known that.
Okay, hang on just a second. Hey, but can I help you with something?
Now check this out. Live eavesdropping, just like that. All right, so Camden was at Colquitt last year, right? Yeah. So they were at Colquitt last year. So it could be in Camden this year.
Okay, I'm back. Well, what's that?
So I'm on the GHSA website and looked at last year's schedule. So it says Camden was at Colquitt County last year. So it could be in Camden this year. But we'll confirm that. We'll confirm that.
Yeah, but listen, no mistake. I mean, that's going to help, obviously. But the thing is, Camden's got a good home field advantage. There's nothing like that Colquitt home field advantage. In fact, I think Colquitt may be one of the three toughest places in the state to play.
That's right.
I really believe.
All right, so let's transition into Richmond Hill. I'm not sure. Man, I'll be honest with you. I don't know anything about Richmond Hill other than this ain't the best region for them to be in.
No, and Matt Lozada, who again I really come to know pretty well over the last couple of years. What a great guy he is. We carried one of the games that we streamed last year. By the way, I just want to let everybody know we'll be back streaming, having our ITG next game of the week. We got some really good team scheduled this year. North Comp's going to be a part of it this year, the Valdosta Wildcats, and we'll give you the full rundown later. But so Matt Lozada has pretty much admitted that, and I'm quoting him now. Matt Lozada told us that, hey, Phil, we just were not physically ready last year for this region, and we're going to have to work really hard to get up to par with where we need to be. So there's no disillusion on his end about, what they need to do to be able to compete week in and week out in Region 178.
That's right. I got you. Well, Phil, honestly, that's that's a coach is supposed to say that. But
yeah, I think, I do, because he's a straight shooter.
That's right.
And again, he's not, and that's just what you get with him. And so he told me that last year, I think they graduated maybe 2 seniors.
Oh, okay.
Had a lot of guys playing last year. And again, I'm quoting him here. He said a lot of those guys that played last year should have been playing on Thursday.
Sure.
Not Friday night. And of course, what he's meaning by that is
junior varsity. Yeah.
So again, it goes back to saying, hey, we just weren't physically ready last year. So listen, here's the thing though. You got to remember that year of experience of going through that. And I'm just talking about playing the Colquitts.
Yep.
And the Lowndes. You can only imagine, what kind of eye-opening experience that was for Richmond Hill.
That's
and those,
right.
Especially those younger players. That's one thing, they'll have that year of experience. It's not going to be much of a culture shock this year when those young guys, go into this schedule for this year. So that's one thing I think that's going to be on their side. But again, they're still going to be a little bit of a disadvantage. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have to steal a game or two. I think we all realize that.
That's probably the best word that you could pick for their schedule. They're going to, and I think they're going to have to do it early in the season just to get some confidence on it, because they've got a pretty tough schedule to start out with. They've got to play Brunswick. Brunswick's going to be a pretty good team. Glen Academy. I'm sorry. Are they playing Brunswick? I think most likely they are. So, they've got to steal, but to your point, they've got to steal a couple of games early on just to get some confidence before heading into that region.
Well, so Larry, if you don't mind, let me turn it around and ask you a question now. So let's take a look at Region 178 as a whole.
Okay.
Who would you say the favorites are? I think probably you would agree with me. I think everybody listening to this or watching this is probably going to agree that it's going to be Colquitt and everybody else.
Phil, this is the Viking Nation. I am the host of the Viking Nation Live. It's Lowndes and then everybody else. What did you think I was going to say?
Oh, all right. Now listen, are you being serious? Are you being the ultimate homer? Is Lowndes ready to take over the crown in Region 178? And listen, I love that. I catch so much heat from Tift County fans because that's who I was, a fan of forever. That's where I grew up. And people, when I say, go Lowndes or what, people are like, what are you talking about, dude? But listen, love the program, love everything Lowndes stands for. I'm just talking about, in terms of pure talent, I really believe it's Colquitt and everybody else. I'm going
to give you 2 answers. This is going to sound as a homer cop-out for sure, but I'm going to give you 2 answers. On paper, everybody, that knows football and follows football would have to agree with you that Colquitt is the favorite because the talent they have coming back. I mean, they have some all-world talent coming back, as evidenced by all the major D1 schools that are after their talent. So what Lowndes has going for them is in these last 6 meetings, I believe, the home team has won that game. And this year they play at Martin Stadium. Now, Lowndes is going to have to Lowndes is going to have to play a near perfect game to beat Colquitt on our home field this year. I think we can do it. But here's the key, and I'm going to tell everybody, because Don Baylor, the new offensive coordinator, has really been putting an emphasis during this offseason of upgrading our passing game. And I'll talk to our fans about that, how the passing game's coming along. But if we've got a balanced attack, if we run the ball 60 to 65% of the time in that game, we lose by 3 scores. I'm telling you, we lose by 3 scores. If we can get our passing game going early on and strike quickly, that's going to put the Colquitt defense on their heels. And I think that's Lowndes' only shot of winning that game. And if that happens, Lowndes wins by a touchdown.
That's fair. That's fair. So you're admitting it. So it's going to take some. It's going to take some ifs. This happens and that happens, right?
Absolutely. Listen, I tell people when they ask me, it's like, Larry, are you a homer? It's like, well, I'm somewhere between a homer and an objective person. So I'm an objective homer. Does that make sense?
Of course. And listen, I wouldn't expect anything else. This is the Viking Nation. And by the way, so I was talking about home field advantages.
Yeah.
I saw firsthand how, and I know that it was 50-50, but still it was at the Concrete Palace. And I've seen enough games there to know that Wintersville Classic last year, that was the most incredible atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, that's the first Wintersville Classic I've been to in I don't know, a decade.
Yeah.
And of course we were on the sidelines. And again, obviously we'll call a lot of football. I'm at a lot of football games. We do a game every Friday night and in some of the best venues in the state. And I remember just looking around thinking, and I told Todd Holcomb from the AJC that Monday, I said, let me tell you, I've never experienced anything like that, maybe ever. And I've been covering the game for 30 years.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say that venue can provide that Lowndes football team with the ultimate home field advantage. And I always like to say, if you got a great home field advantage, that usually means that's about worth a touchdown.
Absolutely.
Before you even take the field, go ahead and give the Vikings a score last year. Look, I know Valdosta won that game last year. Lowndes, as we all know, shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. That game, could have gone either way. But a lot of that was because of that crowd. And I know Valdosta had their crowd into it as well. But still, I just thought that showed a lot about, what it means to play in that venue. So put the Concrete Palace right up there amongst the toughest places to play in the state.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to put something on the screen for you guys to see. Now, some of our, as we would expect, and I would expect nothing less from our fans, but some of our fans are kind of giving you a hard time about picking Colquitt and that kind of stuff. Guys, I'm going to put something on the screen that shows you that Phil is just being objective here. This is what he's looking at. And Phil, what I'm putting up is, nationalhsfb.com's preseason top 25. This is the national top 25. Okay. And in this national top 25, I believe there's like 3 or 4 Georgia teams on there. They've got Buford at ranked number 10. Colquitt is ranked 11. Langston Hughes is 15. And I think that might be it. Oh, and Carrollton is ranked 25. So guys, this is why I feel is so high on Colquitt County. And we heard from Mary Alex Anders a couple of weeks ago why she is so high on it. So Phil is he's not loving on Colquitt. He's just trying to be objective and reflecting what all the pundits are saying. So, I think that Lowndes has a shot, but Phil, you're in your defense, you're just basically giving your opinion on what the tea leaves are showing.
Of course. Listen, to be honest, we probably are involved with Lounge as much as any other program.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with logistics because we happen to be located in the same town, and but there's just a lot. Lounge is very inviting. There's a lot of great things going on with that program.
Right.
So to be objective, though, in the way I report things, got to remember a lot of people still associate with us with just covering the southern part of the state.
That's right.
Now, because for years we were in the game, high school sports magazine, South Georgia, but now, we've grown into a statewide company and we're more of a digital company, yet we do still produce the magazine, but it's a small part of our overall platform. So that being said, I have to be objective. And if I start getting into favoritism with anybody, it's just not good business for us to do that. So I try to just spit it out as fairly and as accurately as I can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, speaking of statewide coverage, you recently did a documentary on the Buford program. So let's transition into Buford because, they're a high profile team. Like we just said, they're favored in the national polls in the top 10. Now I don't know if Joe put that poll out before all-world quarterback Dylan Raiola transferred to Buford or after. But I got to think that he probably elevates that team a notch or two. You've got some insight on or at least you have an opinion on what that transfer is all about, what it may mean for Buford, that kind of stuff. So what's your take on that transfer?
Yeah, and again, this is just my opinion, okay? And my opinion is that, and again, with all due respect to everybody involved, including Dylan Raiola, and I think I've got his last name right.
Yeah, I think so.
Larry, Buford really don't need him. And listen, some of you may be thinking, what are you talking about? He's 5-star this. Name me the last 5-star quarterback at Buford.
You might have a good point. They really haven't needed a 5-star quarterback because they've
Larry, that's just not their game. That's not their game. They win. They've always won with, we're going to line up. We're going to run it down your throat. They've always run those off-balance offensive lines. They still do a lot of what they did when they were 2A. And again, I saw it firsthand. They line up those wing backs to give you like a 7-8 man offensive line. I mean, they put these guys, all the way across the field as legally as they can. And, they're going to run it, and they do run it. And that's what their game is, not dropping back and throwing the ball 50 times a game or whatever. So I'm just saying that, he will make them better, but they were already very good, and they were already going to be the favorite, in my opinion. And I think it's a lot of people's opinion that they're going to, they're the favorite in 7A.
Absolutely. So they've relied on a power running game. That's basically Buford football, and they use a lot of play action pass to get receivers downfield. That's their bread and butter. So does Dylan Raiola change the scheme, or at least for this season for Buford football, because he is a 5-star quarterback, best quarterback in the nation, according to all the rating services. So do you think Brian Appling changes their game plan this year?
I really don't. I don't. We were embedded with Buford for the first week of their spring practice. We stayed with them. That's where the bulk of the video came from that we have posted now. And we actually went over and we had Brian Appling mic'd up at the Norcross game. That was their spring game. And again, this was pre Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, Larry, that they were putting quarterbacks in, Tristan Gabriels and the other quarter. I mean, it didn't matter. They already had a solid, what Buford's always done. It's kind of like, I think, is it Quentin Daniels, who's playing at Stanford now? He's probably the last most well-known for a quarterback from Buford.
Yeah.
He's the one that led them, Larry, at the state championship game that you and I were at. You remember that?
Yep, I do. I remember that game well because you almost got kicked out of the stadium.
Yes, I did. But save that one for just a little bit. But so if you'll remember, though, he was a solid quarterback, not a 5-star. In fact, I mean, I'm guessing maybe 2, 3-star. No knock on him. But that's the kind, he epitomizes the kind of quarterback that Buford needs, which is, hey, we're going to help yourself to all the drinks in there, buddy. Get you something else. He's the kind of quarterback that they need, which is a guy that's going to manage the game, a guy that's going to manage the game. He's not going to kill you with turnovers. He's going to hit receivers, that are open. So to answer your question, no, Brian Applin's going to continue to craft that offense that puts their quarterback in a position to not lose the game for us.
Gotcha.
And so I don't think, to me, it would really take a complete overhaul to try to redo that offense to fully suit Dylan Raiola and his skill set. Now, does that mean that they won't put in a few wrinkles? Of course they will for him. But listen, I get the feeling, and no one has told me this, I get the feeling that Buford is going to make him earn every bit, and I think we all assume that he's going to be the starter, but I would not automatically put him in that spot right now. Again, Brian Appling, he's very loyal. He's been loyal to those guys who have been coming up through the system, who have been taking all those snaps in the spring and who looked good against Norcross in that spring game. So I'm telling you, they're going to make that young man come in. If he does get the starting spot, he's going to earn it.
Yeah, Greg Maddox, one of our viewers, says this. I think he's in your camp. He says he's going to find out high school football is tougher in Georgia than Arizona. And
that's another thing. So yeah, he's absolutely, Greg's absolutely right.
Yeah. So, before we move on from the Buford topic, I have to ask you, before I ask you this question, guys, if you're just joining us, I've got on the phone Phil Jones. He's one of the great guys behind ITG Next. Has spent almost a lifetime, Phil, it seems like, covering high school athletics in the state of Georgia. And they are just more than just a Valdosta company. They're now a statewide company. And you guys have moved into the state of Florida as well, Phil. So welcome to the program, guys. We're talking tonight. We talked a little bit about Camden, what we can expect from Richmond Hill. Now we're talking about Buford football. So, Phil, here's the question that I have for you before we move on. Right. Buford, the first thing that comes to to people's mind when they hear Buford, just because they've dominated the football landscape and just about every other athletic endeavor in the state of Georgia, because they're Buford, people think they automatically go out and recruit all their talent. But I make the argument that Buford's got such a program that they don't have to recruit. So I'm interested to see, what is your take on the Buford situation?
As far as the question of recruiting,
that's right.
It doesn't exist. It is the biggest.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
Well, listen, and I have heard this. And there are people, I'm not going to call their name, but you got folks that'll get on social media and talk about, Buford's at it again. No, guys. Number one, okay, they pull from, I think it's 3 different counties, and again. We've done, I think, a series of 3 total documentaries this year. We've done quite a few things with Buford. And the first one, was to really tell the story and kind of clarify a lot of these perceptions out there and misconceptions about the Buford program. They pull from 3 different counties, okay, and they have such a tough and stringent admissions eligibility. Okay, you've got to be a really good student to qualify to get into Buford. Number one.
That's right.
Number 2, they have this. Going back to the first point I made, they have the strength in numbers. Okay, you're talking about millions of people to pull from. I understand all those are not 16 to 18-year-old football players, but still, you have a large pool of talent to pull from. So you don't have to recruit. There's no need in them doing that. So the Dylan Raiola thing. He wanted to come to Buford so he would be closer to Athens. His family would be closer to Athens. Is Buford going to tell him no? Of course not. And they're not going to tell anybody. They're not going to tell, John Smith's son. And John Smith's completely fictional. But if John Smith calls up and says, "Hey, my son wants to come be on the team," well, come on, you got to enroll him, at our school. And, once he gets enrolled, then we will love to have him, and he can come out, and we'll get him all the equipment to be on the football team. Does that mean he's going to play? No. Now, Dylan Riola is a little bit different story. Well, again, his personality and his reputation precedes him.
Yeah.
So a little bit different, but I promise you, he is going to have to earn it. But no, getting back to the recruiting, absolutely not, because they don't have to. They just don't have to. Talent, they are a magnet for talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot that comes from strength in the numbers.
And guys, let's be honest. If Dylan Riola and his parents came knocking on the door at Lowndes, we would welcome him with open arms too.
Of course,
that's just the reality.
Well, but again, you're not going to refuse really anybody.
That's right.
That's really the bigger point here, Larry. Again, he wanted, okay, and this is important that everybody hears this. He and his family wanted to come to be closer to Athens. And to be honest with you, you're not really looking at a lot of programs where he can come in and play against the best competition in the state. And Buford is about an hour's drive from Athens. It's an easy path from Buford over to Athens. So his family wants to be able to see him play without having to jump on a plane and flying out of Arizona, once every couple of Saturdays. So there were a lot of advantages for him coming here. Getting a year in, being closer to the Georgia program where he'll be next year. So it made sense from a lot of different reasons. If he had come to Buford and was going to be playing at the University of Florida, then you would have been like, yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense.
That's right.
But anyway, so I don't think that, again, Buford had no reason. Let's pretend that Dylan Riola never called, never mentioned about coming to Buford. They would still, right now, we would be talking about, again, Tristan Gabriel's kid, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other one. But yeah, two kids that were really already vying for the starting position, and they were going to be just fine. And they were going to be the favorite, likely, in 7A. Look at the athletes they've got. It's unbelievable. When I was up there in that week of spring practice, the college recruiters are just lined up, walking through the gate, and just one after another, vying for Brian Appling's time. Coach, I'll talk to you, and I'm talking about the Cincinnatis and the USCs, and so totally different animals.
Absolutely, man. Hey, listen, before you go, let me get your quick take on one other topic that I'm going to spring on you. And right now, Phil, this topic of NIL is really starting to heat up. Even in the state of Georgia, the GHSA is talking about this now. Late last year in December of 2022, the state association in Tennessee actually passed this rule that now allows their high school athletes to take advantage of NIL. What do you think NIL is going to do to high school athletics?
I've really been on the fence. Now, let me say this. About a year ago or so, I had predicted that NIL was going to trickle down to the high school level. And a lot of people didn't agree with me. In fact, I had a couple people said, no, it's never going to happen. Well, here it is. As you just mentioned, it's knocking on the door. I guess it goes back to not withholding a young student athlete from opportunities to better him or herself financially.
Yeah.
This is one of those situations, Larry, that's really got to be managed better than anything else. And that's certainly better than this transfer situation that has, up to this point, and you can ask Dr. Robin Hines of the GHSA, it has been his number one thing to deal with, transfer eligibility.
Yeah.
There's thousands. We hear about one or two or, whatever, a handful every year, but there are thousands of these where kids come in, apply for eligibility to play, and GHSA is trying to do their due diligence, and really they're understaffed to do that effectively, truly effectively, at 100% accuracy. So anyway, NIL I think is going to take over as far as the toughest thing that GHSA is going to have to govern and oversee, and it's going to be a real challenge. But as far as endorsing NIL at the high school level, I don't think we have a choice. It's coming whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I don't think legally the GHSA or any association can stop it. You can't stop a high school kid from accepting a job. That's basically what it is. So they can put some restrictions and rules around it to kind of manage it, but they can't stop it from happening. So
right, Larry, and that's going to be the challenge, like you said. Again, it goes back to governing it somehow, and I guess if there is a concern, trying to look at it from both sides, high school sports has always been the last great untouched amateur frontier of sports.
Yeah.
It used to be college sports, fell under that umbrella, but now, of course, that's gone by the wayside. And I'm not saying that we were ever, high school sports and college sports were 100% removed from, the influence of money. But for the most part, it was at the professional level. Then, obviously it just started creeping into the, to the college level. And, you can really say that it began with and I never can remember his name, the college basketball player out of UCLA that really started the pull for NIL.
Yeah,
for being rewarded for using his name and likeness. And I apologize, I can't remember his name. Ed O'Bannon. But that's where it started. And so that same thing, and look, that same thing is now going to trickle down, and already is at the high school level, where a player says, hey, you guys are, I want to be rewarded for, the use of my name, the use of my likeness. And, so it was just a matter of time before this came to fruition. A little bit sooner than I would have thought, but
absolutely. When the NCAA opened those legal floodgates and passed that, and then then a number of state associations and state legislatures, to be honest with you, they legalized it in their states, and so now it's just a race of which high schools get it in place as fast as they can.
That's exactly right. How many states already have that now?
I believe it's up to 9 states have put some type of framework in place through their association. I know Georgia's looking at it. I think there's other number of states around this area looking at it as well. So by this time next year, I would not be shocked to see half the states have it in place.
Gotcha. Hey, Larry, I've got to let you go, man. Like I said, I've got a gentleman here that's working on the house, so let me tend to him. And I really do appreciate you having me on and being good natured about everything, Larry. I always enjoy coming on with you.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for calling in, Phil.
Okay, see you.
See you, Larry. Man, I appreciate Phil giving us his time tonight. Greg, I did not have a chance to ask Phil how many regular season games Lowndes will win. Let me ask you. Let me put you guys on the spot. You guys like give me and Phil a hard time during that interview. Let me put you on the spot to get you on record. How many regular season games do you think Lowndes will win this year? You guys have the information that we have. The passing games being upgraded. They're putting in the time. They're another year older than they were last year. The tough competition that we have in this region. We've got a handful of tough non-region games. So in the 10-game regular season, I'm not even going to put you on the spot about what the record's going to be in the region. Let's just say overall, how many games in that 10 games? What do you think Lowndes' record is? All right. So Jody Hewitt out of the gate saying we going 14-1. And I'm assuming, Jody, that game number 14 is winning a state championship. I like the way you think. Now, Tierra Battle says she thinks Lowndes is going to go 8-2. Okay. All right. You guys have some very, very high expectations. Greg Maddox, 9-1. Trainer says 9-1. Uh-oh. Trainer, you got to call me. You got my cell phone number now. Trainer says, I had Lowndes at 9-1 until this month. I think I know what you're talking about, but you're going to have to call me just to clarify. Brian Spray says, okay, most of you are saying 9-1. Tierra, low man on totem pole says 8-2. Candace Marie, I like the way you think. She says that we got the missing keys now. I hear you. Listen, I got, speaking of that, let me throw something else on the screen. Let's talk about this passing game. I want to minimize this because I think it deserves. Check that out. Check that out. This is how Lowndes is doing in the offseason as far as their 7-on-7 competitions goes. They've been in three big tournaments already this year. They were runner-up down in Gainesville one week. Either a week or a couple weeks later, they were quarterfinal. They made it to the quarterfinals in Gainesville against some stiffer competition. And then this past weekend, they were the champs. Or was it this past week? They were champs over in Jacksonville at the Jaguar Stadium. So they're getting better. They are really, really upgrading. Good. Now, I've been told that the quarterback competition has made both quarterbacks better. Y'all saw a taste of that in the spring game. Not spring game, but spring scrimmage. And I've been told that during this summertime off-season workout, this quarterback competition is making both Brooks and Marvis much, much better quarterbacks. So I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised in our passing game. I'm telling you guys, that our defense is going to be just fine. Our running game is going to be just fine. If we can find that missing element in our passing game, and when I say missing element, we've always been able to pass here and there, but we've never had a consistent, you know what I'm talking about, a consistent, high-octane, high-powered, stable passing game. If we can find that missing key and at least give a balanced attack to an opposing defense, they can't just simply pin their ears back and gun for our running back and our quarterback every single time like they've been doing the last 2 decades, right? So I think that's going to be the key this year. And guys like Jalen Carter, Marvis is going to have a good year. Other receivers, Grant Lasky's going to have a great year at tight end, and other receivers as well. And I'm just telling you, I've got this deep gut feeling that our passing game is going to be the key this year. Candace Marie, she said, now her son is one of the wide receivers. She says, LG, you tell them too much. Keep them guessing. Well, Candace, I understand what you're saying. So I walk a fine line between keep them guessing, meaning the opponents, and keeping our crowd fired up and engaged. So I try to walk that fine line. So I felt like, I needed to be completely objective with it. So I think, honestly, that's going to be the key to our season this year is that passing game. And I felt that way there's no secret. I think I've talked about that ad nauseum over the last several years. That's been the key. She says, no, they'll see August. What do you mean August? Oh, you're talking about in the preseason scrimmage against Tift County. Is that what you're talking about, Candace? I think so. Casey says, you don't have to fire up. Let me put this on the screen. Casey, that comment is so good. Let me go ahead. Casey says, you don't have to fire us up. We always fired up. This is Lounge football, baby. Right, Casey? I know what you're talking about. Kevin Riley has an interesting perspective. He says it was with Michael Barrett. Yeah, I agree with you. Kevin, Michael Barrett was not just an exceptional athlete, but he had a pretty good arm, and he was a deep threat with the ball as well, especially connecting with guys like Tavon Kyle. Oh, my gosh, that was a fantastic duo, wasn't it? Oh, Jennifer Green, Fountain Green, has just said, I can't wait to watch this crew. Friday night in the fall is my favorite. Speaking of the Greens, let me go ahead and thank our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. So we've had this great show, great content tonight. Let's thank our sponsors properly. So you guys hang in there. So I want to thank Pepsi of Valdosta being the title sponsors this year. They're great producers and distributors of Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Rockstar, Mountain Dew Energy, Mountain Dew Spark, the new Starry Limited Lime drink. Thank you so much to Pepsi of Valdosta. Thank you so much to Kyle Conger at White Oak Investment. Guys, if you need some financial advice, you need someone to talk to you about your financial future, give Kyle a call. He does a great job of giving out some good advice. Our buddy Tim Neesmith, he's one of our regular viewers and commenters on the White Oak Investment comment line tonight. He's got a company called A Shade of Perfection. If you want to make your house beautiful, start with your window treatments. Timmy can help you with custom shades and blinds. He's got a company called A Shade of Perfection, 251-3479, or his website, ashadeofperfection.com. Thank you to Thank you. So thank you to Josh Batson and Justin Haskin at the Migraine and Spine Clinic of Valdosta. 229-333-9838. Guys, if you need back pain treatment, if you need migraine treatment, they are your certified headache medicine specialists. So give Josh and Justin a call at the Migraine and Spine Clinic of Valdosta. Guys, thank you for your friendship and your sponsorship. Thank you to Chandler Kudik, Aqua Works Pool Company. He sent me a email yesterday. Listen, he's got a cool system. He comes out, cleans the pool, and as soon as he hits the little button on his iPhone, it sends me a report right to my iPhone, telling me exactly what he did, how many chemicals he had to put in, what he did to adjust the levels of all this gobbledygook. All I know is the pool's beautiful. It's sparkling. And thank you to Chandler Kudik for keeping it that way at AquaWorks Pool Company, 229-415-0752. And then finally, these guys, Imperial Auto Sales of Valdosta, they've got two great locations to serve your automotive needs. One's on Ashley Street. The other one's on Bay Tree Road. Thank you so much to Tony Green and Trey Hatcher. And so the Greens are watching tonight. Guys, thank you for your friendship and your sponsorship. They are pillars of the community. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors. Jody, he said, be prepared to see something we've missed for a few years. I love it. I love the tease, Jody. Love what Coach Carter is doing. Just not just at the high school, but all the way down to the middle school programs. I really think that's the one key we've missed for a while. Got to keep feeding the beast. Now, Jody, you can't leave us hanging. Jody's pretty involved in the program. So you can't leave us hanging. So what do you mean? Be prepared to see something we've missed for a few years. Are you talking about getting involved with the middle school programs? Or is there just another little tidbit of secret sauce that we need to know about? Jody, don't leave us hanging. All right. So a couple more things before we call it a night. We've been talking about the NIL stuff for a couple of weeks now. So Tennessee, a neighboring state, has already put it in place. And if I had to bet, I would say that Georgia, the GHSA, is going to do this very, very thing. So let me go ahead and put this on the screen so you guys can see it. I'm going to blow this up so you can see it. All right, so here it goes right here. So right here, across the country, Tennessee now becomes the 22nd state. I was a little off there. 22nd state now with that authorizes NIL deals to athletes. So we're almost there to half the states. Here's the key. There are requirements for athletes to compete in the TSSA. Man, that's a long name. Why don't they just call it the TSA? They are not allowed to engage in NIL activities that directly involve their on-field performance. In addition, the TSSAA, man, that's a mouthful, and member schools are not allowed to be involved, and athletes are not permitted to use their association marks or their logos or school during NIL promotions and activities. And that's it. If you can live within those parameters, NIL is going to be wide open. Guys, be prepared, because Georgia, I'm predicting, is going to adopt language very, very similar to this. So you saw the restrictions right there. Basically, they can't use the logos or the trademark symbols of the school or the high school association, right? They probably can't wear the uniform. They can probably wear a uniform that's like the one that you have. It's going to be similar in color. Let's be honest. It'll be similar in color, right? So that's basically it. They're not allowed to engage in NIL activities that directly involve their on-field performance, right? So that's kind of vague language there. In addition, the schools aren't allowed to be involved, and athletes are not permitted to use their association logos or school logos. That's it. Welcome to the Wild Wild West. Welcome to the Wild Wild West. Jody Hewitt says, closed practice are for a reason, LG. Jody, I know, but word still has a way of leaking out of those closed practices. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Man, there's eyes everywhere. So I know you can't talk about it. I know you can't talk about it. So Coach Carter's got some surprises, some tricks up his sleeve, and we can't wait to see or the unveiling of that come this fall. So we'll just all be patient and see what's out there. Jody Hewitt says he got all out frenemies on the show. Yeah, you guys are something else. You are something else. Let me tell you. Yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna see how it turns out. I think the passing game's coming along. The running game is going to be just as strong as ever with Road Dogg and Smoke back there behind it. Marvis and or Brooks are going to be excellent at the quarterback position. So we're going to say tears. Jody, you're killing me tonight, man. You're killing me. He said, nada. I call it the mushroom treatment. Feed them crap and keep them in the dark. Now, that's kind of funny. I've never heard that expression before, but that's dang funny right there. Tierra, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I can't wait any longer for August 11th, but I guess I have no choice. And that is true. I have no choice. Or Tierra, call me afterwards. I'll let you know. I'm kidding. So, Travis got an interesting question in the last couple of minutes of the show tonight. What's going to happen to the smaller schools like Cook or Berrien that can't get big deals to the kids like Lowndes or Colquitt can with this NIL stuff? Travis, you remember last week's show, we had a quote from Byron Slack, who is the head coach for the Cook County Hornets. And that was his exact worry right there. What you're bringing up is his exact worry. He's afraid some of these smaller schools that neighbor larger counties with larger programs are going to start losing athletes to these bigger programs. Now, let me just kind of pump the brakes on this for a second. We don't know what NIL is going to do at the high school level. It may not do anything. It may fizzle out because there is an argument that says, what is it really, if a high school athlete does an NIL deal, is it really going to move the needle for that business to bring in more business? And the answer is no, it's not. But that's not the purpose of NIL. It's not. The purpose of NIL is to allow these kids to make some money off their name, image, and likeness, right? That's the foundation. But what's the reality? How can companies use this to their benefit? How can programs use this to their benefit? Programs have to be very, very careful. I'm telling you, they have to walk a tightrope. As a matter of fact, I think the GHSA is going to adopt this similar language to the Tennessee Association. And that basically says the schools cannot be involved. Remember, it says, in addition, the TSA and the member schools are not allowed to be involved. That's according to the Tennessee language. Georgia's probably going to have very similar language. So I'm saying that is untenable. There is no way that rule is going to stick over the long term. And here's why. If you don't allow the schools to get involved, if you don't allow the association to get involved, then you're going to leave these kids out on an island. And if they strike these deals on their own, they're going to get in trouble. They're going to get into tax trouble, and they're going to find themselves getting into trouble with their eligibility. So I'm predicting now, the GHSA will probably pass language like this, but it's going to evolve because we're going to run into problems. And then the next evolution of those rules are going to allow school. I'm just telling you, schools are going to have to get involved just to keep their kids out of trouble. Because if you leave kids on their own and their families that don't have sophistication, don't read anything of that. You guys know what I'm talking about. Some kids don't know how to balance a checkbook. Some kids overdraw on their debit account. So you know what I'm talking about. If you leave kids on an island by themselves and their families to try to figure out this NIL stuff on their own, one, they're going to screw up their eligibility. Two, they may get themselves into financial and or tax problems. So schools will have no choice over the long term to get involved. If nothing else, to create another position that is basically an NIL/recruiting coordinator. It could be the same person. Let's say Coach Fred, he is very involved in the college recruiting. Let's say you have someone like a Coach Fred that is involved with the recruiting, but on the other side, his other hat says that he helps these kids navigate these NIL deals. Now, the trainer says the IRS has already put the country on notice about NIL. Exactly right, trainer. The IRS is looking at this. You know why? Because it's an income source. Wherever there is income, the IRS is not far behind. I mean, this is finance 101 when you're out in the real world. So you can't leave these kids on an island by themselves. A lot of them don't have the money to hire an accountant or to hire a lawyer to help them navigate this stuff, right? So the schools are going to have to get involved. I mean, this rule by the Tennessee Association is not feasible. It's not workable over the long term. So, yeah, Fred Mitchell, I mean, he's commenting right here. Schools will have to guide them eligibility-wise, but then he goes on to say, but parents will need to get proper legal team to deal with the financial side. So, Fred, my only argument is a lot of these kids and families, they're not going to be able to afford that stuff. So over the long term, the schools are going to be forced to jump into the mix, whether it's unofficially through the booster clubs or officially through guys like Coach Mitchell that might be wearing two hats there. Or you might have a legal counsel. Some of these schools have attorneys on board. So you might have to develop an assistant under. So the athletic director might have to hire an assistant athletic director with a focus on NIL. There's so many different ways this can play out. But because we're talking about underage kids, but we're talking about potentially a lot of money, and we're talking about potentially their eligibility to continue to play sports at the high school level. So I think it's unwise for the schools not to get involved, especially early on. Now, you have to if you allow the schools to get involved, you do have to be very careful and craft language and restrictions and rules around how much they can get involved, because it can easily be abused. Let's be honest about it. But I think it's foolish to leave these kids on an island by themselves, especially ones that don't have experience with finance, right? Because we don't know really how big these NIL deals are going to go. Let me give you an example. Some doubters out there might be thinking to themselves, why are you spending so much time on NIL? I mean, who is going to be persuaded by a high school kid to buy a car at the local dealership if he signs an NIL deal promoting local cars? And in that situation, I would agree with you. But here's another perspective. Who are some of the biggest influencers on the planet to other high school kids, to other young kids, especially at the middle school? Because when you add all these kids up, whether it's a middle school or high school, that represents a lot of purchasing power. I know they don't have any money, but let's be honest, kids have a way of getting their parents to spend money. So who influences these kids? Other kids, other social media influencers. So some of these guys, some of these student athletes that are savvy and their parents know what they're doing, they can really craft these deals with these larger companies, these regional companies, even local companies, to target the kids, the youth market, because they may not have an effect on me or you that's in the market out to buy a car, but they certainly have an effect on younger people that might be trying to buy a certain brand, like a Nike brand or an Adidas or any other brand, just fill in the blank. So there is so much potential with NIL, even at the high school level. If kids and their families, if schools and programs are willing to be creative, then this could be a big boon for these high school kids. Fred says that attorneys will get the money once deals are brokered. They might require a certain percentage once it's done. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there could be attorneys that specialize in this kind of stuff. Jody's got a good point. And Jody, this was the kind of stuff that I was kind of hinting at when I'm talking about social influencers with regional and national brands. Jody says, LG, I think it's bigger than local business. I think you will see huge companies like vehicle companies using local companies to target top prospects. That way they can lock a deal in with them for something rolling into college. You're exactly right. And to extend what you're thinking, Jody, this also extends to the college programs as well. What stops a college program from creating a collective to target high school kids to sign? Let's say you got a college program that is targeting certain prospects around let's say they're targeting a Lowndes prospect. Let's say it's Smoke that the University of Georgia might be targeting. I don't know. I'm just pulling out a name there, an example. Okay. And so Georgia comes in and says, listen, NIL is legal at the high school level now. Listen, we're going to help you land this NIL deal. Schools have a way of doing this through the back channels, right? And so now you get a national brand to come in and say, listen, we love the University of Georgia. We want you to represent this brand, that kind of stuff. What does it do? It helps to influence, maybe indirectly, but we all know how this game is played. They now influence and steer that kid to the University of Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. Just pick a program. You see how this can balloon and spiral out of control. So Trainer says, case in point, when Travis Hunter beat Lowndes, he got millions of views on TikTok just for dancing on Lowndes' sidelines. Bingo. Trainer, you just hit the nail on the head. One high school kid reached millions of people nationwide that represented a lot of spending dollars. And that's why NIL at the high school is going to be big. So you can have different tiers of it. You can have smaller players, medium-sized players, and then the national guys. So there's no telling how this is going to go. We're going to have to all sit back, buckle up, and prepare for the ride, because I promise you it's going to get wild. And in the end, I'm predicting schools are going to have to get involved. The association, the GHSA, and other associations going to have to get involved. It could be that one way to structure is you could have a region hire an attorney to help manage all the different NIL deals for all the different athletes across the region wide. You just never know how this stuff is going to shape up, because the GHSA and these other associations, they're going to pass these rules with very, very minimum restrictions. So if there's not a restriction or a rule in place, what does that mean? What does it tell an attorney? What does it tell the public? That it tells everyone else that unless it hits these rules and violates these rules, that means everything else is wide open. Everything else is legal because it hasn't been restricted in a bylaw. So that's what I'm worried about. And the TSA, they need, the Tennessee Association, I should say, they really need to tighten up their language. When they say, in addition, the TSA and member schools are not allowed to be involved, they don't say anything about booster clubs. They might be implying that, but unless it's written into the language, I'm worried about booster clubs getting a hold of this kind of stuff. I'm not talking about anyone. I'm just talking about in general, because booster clubs can be creative when it comes to fundraising. So anyway, keep an eye on this topic, because this topic alone has the potential. It really, really does have the potential for transforming the state of high school football. You can be laughing right now, but mark my words, this is going to have a dramatic impact on the state of high school football going forward once this is passed. And I'll end with this. Fred Mitchell says, coaches across the state will have the task of keeping the locker room together. This is a different beast. Absolutely. You bring up a good point, Fred. What he's talking about is you have some star players that are signing NIL deals, and then the grunts, like let's say you have a star running back or a star quarterback, and they sign an NIL deal for, let's say, $5,000. Okay. Which is not a lot of money for a high school kid. That's a huge amount of money. But all of a sudden, you've got a quarterback getting a $5,000 check from a sponsor, an NIL sponsor. And then all of a sudden, these grunts, these offensive linemen aren't getting squat. So you know how volatile emotions can get at the high school level. So I think Fred's point is these coaches are going to have their hands full of keeping a locker room together. because jealousy may evolve out of this whole deal. So now you guys know why I've been spending so much time. I've devoted 3 shows this year, just this year alone, 3 segments on this NIL topic, because we keep getting newer information. Right. So anyway, keep an eye on this, guys, because we never know how this is going to turn out. So listen, next week is the 4th of July. That's the Independence Day for America. So let's celebrate it with your fireworks, all that stuff. Thank the Lord for the country that we live in. We don't get it perfect all the time, but as our founding documents say, in order to form a more perfect union, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We, the people, try to make this union more and more perfect the older we get, because we don't have a dead Constitution. We don't have a dead society. You and I have impact on the way our country is governed. So sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but leave it to the brilliance. Let's celebrate the brilliance of the founding fathers and how they set up the Constitution and when they declared independence from the crown. So we can all rally around that. Even if we disagree about the body politic, we can all celebrate the freedom that we have. So with that said, God bless America. God bless Lowndes County, and go Vikings. Y'all have a great weekend.